Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Pinsky in the Brain. I'm your host, Jason Pinsky. Today, I'm excited to introduce our special guest, Drew Rothe of Xylem Robotics. Drew is a true jack of all trades, a master of all, whose versatile skill set is like a Swiss Army knife in the world of cannabis automation. His innovative work is transforming the industry by bridging the gap between technology and operations. And we're thrilled to dive into his journey. So let's get started. Drew, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Let's start at the beginning.
All right.
You grew up in Pasadena, California. Share with us what happened in your early years and how that was influential to you.
Oh, it was definitely a smaller town. I always say Pasadena, but realistically it's right next to Pasadena in a town that no one has really heard of called La Cañada.
Oh.
Again, right next to the Rose Bowl, so I just say Pasadena.
Yeah.
But when I say a bubble of a town, it doesn't get much more bubble than this, as in if I got, pulled over for skateboarding in the wrong place, I'd have three of my mom's friends driving by and, recognizing me, and then I'd, already be in trouble before I got home.
Oh, so it wasn't even like they'd get you out of trouble.
No, they just rat me out.
They were the ones.
Yeah.
What was it like? Were you were you into sports? Were you into arts? Were you into what was childhood Drew?
Definitely just into just being outside and, whether it was sports or kind of just doing my own thing, whether skateboarding, hanging out with friends.
Yeah.
Stealing pumpkins, smashing mailboxes.
When did you first start smoking weed?
I think it was just right before I turned 17.
Okay.
So I was kind of on the later side.
Yeah.
Than most people.
What was your experience with that? I'm curious, because some people, I started when I was 13. Was it bongs? Was it blunts? What was the weed culture when you were coming up?
It was definitely, Swisher Sweets, blunts, wraps, all the way to, soda cans, beer cans before I knew anything about heavy metals.
Yeah.
And, testing that kind of and what that can do to the body.
Yeah.
So looking back, I'm glad I didn't smoke as much out of the, cans as apples and, basically anything.
You mentioned in the opener, we mentioned, golf, skateboarding, snowboarding.
Mm-hmm.
How did that relate to your first weed experience?
Oh, I was at a snowboarding camp in Utah. Actually, was the first time I smoked.
Amazing.
And we were sitting just behind one of the cabins. It was whiteout blizzard. Just passing a blunt back and forth.
We were on the ski team in high school, and that were all the stoners coincidentally, on the chairlift that would take you up the mountain. That was the only safe place to. You'd have to get your one or two hits in.
Yeah.
But before you got to the top. After high school, you chose to travel abroad. Tell me about that.
It was, either go straight away to a 4-year or, I had a little bit of money from my grandparents that was just set aside for school. So the two options in front of me were go to a 4-year college or go to a junior college and get a travel for a year and do a couple study abroad programs. And as soon as I found out that I didn't have to take the SATs to do the study abroad, I was like, I'm going to do that.
What was that like?
It was awesome. I was 18 when I went to England. I didn't know anybody on the trip, didn't know anybody in England, and just went and made friends. Almost got a job at a bar.
You went part of a school program?
Yeah, it was with a school program.
Okay, like an exchange kind of thing?
Kinda.
So you studied abroad in England?
Yeah, I was there for 9 months when I was 18. It was the first time I had been to Europe or, basically anywhere else besides North and South America. So it was definitely a, culture shock. And it was...
Was there weed in England?
It was... I actually did buy a bag of oregano at one point.
Right, because you guys would have to go...
told me it was weed.
You guys would have to go take the train to Amsterdam or something like that.
Yeah, I took the ferry to Amsterdam for a weekend one time and did bring some back with me, which was great. Compared to, some of the flour in California, it was trash. But
of course.
When I was 18, I was like, oh, this is great. I could buy, it was the first time I bought legal weed.
Yeah. And was Costa Rica also an exchange program?
Yes. Yeah. Costa Rica was also just with a class of 30. It was less of an exchange, more of a scientific study abroad, I guess you could say. It was all my lab credits.
Well, yeah. I mean, we talked about psychology, mathematics. How did that fall into that whole, experience? Were you trying to get into a certain field? I mean, those things are kind of polar opposites.
No, I'd always just been good at math, and I was more focusing on psychology just because there's a broad range of careers you can do with a degree like that. And when I found out how many, more math classes I'd have to take to just get the double major, I just said, might as well.
So you came back to California. Take me through it.
Yeah, came back to California, immediately transferred up to UC Santa Barbara.
Okay. And that was still continuing studies up there?
Yep. Yeah, because basically at PCC and the study abroad is all my undergraduate classes and getting that out of the way, just, the general education.
Did you graduate?
Yeah.
And you got your degree?
Yep.
In double major?
Yep.
Oh, man. So what happened? Like, how did it transition? Like, how could, you didn't become a scientist or a mathematician?
No.
Or what was going on in the world that made you kind of fall into tech?
Well, the options with those 2 degrees are pretty much to either keep going to school or be a teacher. And
right.
I didn't want to do either of those because they both involved school.
Yeah.
Whether I was working there or attending there. So I had no idea what I wanted to do. It was really, actually, my parents were like, oh, you should look for a sales job. That's pretty generic. I was like, all right. And so I found a, job posting on Craigslist and ended up really liking the culture there and getting into it and kind of was perfect.
This was software sales.
Yeah, into software sales.
I actually had a software company in the 90s. And I remember like if you're selling Microsoft Word for $200, it's a different game than if you're selling enterprise software. What was it? Like,
it was definitely enterprise software. Like, talking average sale price of like $30,000 to $40,000.
These were startups, right? I would assume.
Yeah. The first company was like medium-sized company, like not necessarily bare bones startup like some of the ones I've worked at, but like it had more structure. Like there was an HR person.
What was that experience like in terms of being in software sales? How did that help to kind of shape you? Like we described you earlier as a Swiss Army knife, a master of all. Tell me about that experience, before you got into the weed industry that kind of gave you that multifaceted skill set.
I'd say early on it was, 100 plus cold calls a day. And eventually I got to the point where I got, able to keep people on the phone because I was able to, create a conversation out of nothing and get people to be interested in what I had to say. And then I took that and was like, all right, how can I cut corners? How can I skip the line? How can I get to the end faster?
What did you do specifically, though, that kind of cheated the system in terms of getting into the database itself?
Yeah, I started learning how to use the CRM on the back end and, so for customer relations management, so like Salesforce.
Right.
And so I started training to be a Salesforce administrator.
Right.
Because then I'd have a leg up on everyone else.
You had almost a competitive advantage internally.
Oh, yeah.
By knowing how to use the tools.
Much more competitive. I could generate reports, and to the point where people were asking me to generate reports for them. And, if they're on my team, I'd say, yeah, sure. Yeah. But if they weren't, I'd be like, maybe.
Tell me how that transitioned. There was kind of a connection between technology and cannabis at ease, but also just generally speaking, like the weed industry really started to turn into something, especially here in California, 2017, 16, 17. How did you transition? Was it because of the convergence of cannabis and technology, or was it more the team that you were with? What was the story?
I'd say it's probably a little bit of both. I mean, with tech and software, it was infrastructure software. So I'm, selling something that the customers of those clients are never going to know that they're using. But with like Xylem, for example, this is directly touching a consumer product that's going to their customers. So we definitely have to be a lot more careful than, just, again, selling software. We were trained to say yes to everything.
Right.
And then customer support had to figure it out.
Right.
But now I'm managing full cycle.
Well, that's but having that history of starting out, on the top of the funnel in a sales organization gives you that foundation to be able to really take it through the entire customer experience today.
Yeah. And then it was always, learning how to make something work in tech. And so whether that, not necessarily on the tech side, but how to get through that process, whether that was finding out like if a director had a certain number he could sign off on and figure out how to get the software under that price.
Right.
Just to, again, skip the line, cut corners, get it, done as quick as possible.
But in the weed industry, you had to be a little bit more hands-on.
Yeah, a little bit more patient.
Tell me about that transition. Talk to me about how did Elite get started?
I actually don't know how Elite came about buying the farm at first. I got involved with it because the last software company I was at basically laid off the entire team before they got acquired by Google. and I was about 2 weeks short of vesting my stock options, which I had the money to buy. So I was very upset.
Yeah.
That I was, the top performer at that company and then just treated like a, name on a spreadsheet and let go without any kind of compensation. And so I called up one of my old managers and was like, hey, I'm done with the software game. Like, these companies just don't care in the tech space. This, Silicon Beach is dying.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, well, we just bought a weed farm. I was like,
so it was the people that you had worked with that kind of brought you back into the mix.
Yep.
And what was that like? Like, starting a cannabis company in 2017, California, the beginning of regulations, at the changing of regulations, you guys had a cultivation end of it and then also got into processing?
Yeah, we had a cultivation to start, and in 2017, we were just doing kind of the extraction stuff on the side of the cultivation because that was allowed.
Right.
In 2017 when it was just medical in California. And it was a lot easier as an operator before recreational came into play. And then the state just expected people to know what to do. I remember learning about the distro licenses and when taxes are supposed to be paid, and we just didn't even know who to pay it to at which steps.
Right. Well, I don't think the state even knew at that point.
No, and they kept changing it.
Right.
Every 3-4 months.
So tell me about the early days of starting an extract processing facility. Actually, take me even further back to before you guys actually started up as a company. I've heard stories, man. I was around back then. What was it like literally filling vape carts by hand?
Oh, it was awful. It was very, labor intensive. We're, trying to basically create a GMP facility in a garage or a storage container that didn't have air conditioning. We had hot plates, heat guns.
Yeah.
Again, this was early on. So, the hardware hasn't really changed much in the past years, but the quality of standards has gone way up. If you looked at some of our carts from back in the day that were CBD and THC, basically ratios, but it looked like crude.
Yeah.
And, compared to something like the liquid diamonds and the rosin that we fill these days, it's, night and day difference.
Yeah.
But it was one of the best selling vapes on the Ease platform just because people like the CBD aspect of it as well.
Well, what happened? You mentioned the Ease platform. You guys basically, my understanding, Elite was kind of built as a supply chain to supply primarily products that would go on the Ease platform initially, and then started to do white labeling for a lot of other different companies and brands. But I worked at Ease. I can tell you from my firsthand experience, choosing our vendors was not only based on quality, fitting a certain niche, but also was really based on supply chain.
Yep.
And making sure that our partners were able to, we would do 10,000 deliveries a day in some cases, massive numbers. How did that translate to being able to supply products? What was the experience and what did you find were the challenges?
Well, where to start on that? Definitely early on days at Ease, they didn't have any, standards as far as their ordering right off the bat. I know that they built their backend on Odoo, but that wasn't about till 2018 or 19, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
When early on, it was just I'd get orders for 7 units here, 6 units here. And so I had to actually push back and be like, hey, we have a case standard of, 25 units. That's the minimum order.
Right.
Because I'd be losing money driving up to, San Jose to deliver 6 units.
Yeah.
That are, wholesaling for $12 each. That'd be more in gas, basically.
Yeah.
Balancing that with cash pickups as well, because again, this is in 2017 before recreational hit. Then drivers started getting robbed. So they added that aspect to it. I would always show up with a different car that I would rent. Just so I wasn't getting, because they were basically targeting people that they saw come multiple times to some of these depots.
Wow.
And get them on the way out.
That's something you would not even think of. Get them on the way out when they had the cash.
Or drugs.
Right. Right.
Because either you're, dropping off drugs, picking up cash, or you're picking up drugs to then go out and make deliveries.
Legal drugs.
Legal drugs, yeah. Cannabis. Yeah.
Well, cannabis is we're rebranding it to kind of be, Well,
I'm just talking the point of the guys robbing the cars. They're going to say there's drugs in those cars. Let's rob them.
Yeah. Right. They would think about it as drugs.
Yeah. And
right.
so
we're holding medicine.
Yeah. And so Oakland was definitely, one of the sketchier ones. And I'd usually try to show up around 8 a.m. So I'd have to leave LA around, 2 or 3 in the morning, because 8 a.m. was right, when some of the tweakers went to bed before the gangsters woke up.
Crazy. You don't even think about like that, so many people in the industry, especially in the regulated goods market, look at it from one perspective. You don't always connect to the actual challenges that the operators and the people that, have been in this for, a decade or more have had to deal with, challenge wide. And before we get to that in a more meaningful way, tell me a little bit, though, about some of the growing pains at Elite and how Jeff, as an investor and partner in the company, and his background helped to identify some of these needs, because I see this as a really unique kind of relationship where, the robots that ultimately turned into Xylem Robotics weren't really initially designed for third parties to purchase and buy. I mean, this sounded to me like it was an in-house competitive advantage, not only to be able to keep up to scale, but to also be able to make better quality products. What was it like being in a hash-making facility and also developing automation at the same time?
It was definitely something exciting to be part of, and probably the biggest thing we were overcoming, well, let's take a step back. When Jeff first came in as an investor was right when we bought the building in King City for our Type 7 volatile extraction lab.
Right.
It was a shell of a building filled with dirt and old, run down, beat up cars. So it was, basically used for storage. So clearing that out, because it was in the, quote unquote green zone of King City, which allowed for cannabis, was quite the task.
Yeah.
And then basically building a building within that building to allow for like our C1D1, which is the explosive proof room. And
right. All the fire department compliance.
Yeah. Huge fire suppression system, huge security system. We had to have a guard 24/7, an armed guard, which required an extensive amount of insurance, as well as, paying him. We had 2 guards that worked 2 12-hour shifts. That was, $25,000 a week.
I remember because you guys actually had so many licenses for distro and extraction and retail, all these different licenses. If I correct me if I'm wrong, but
no retail, but
it was all cultivation and all on the supply chain side, but it was all under one roof. And correct me if I'm wrong, didn't you guys need to have 17 bathrooms in order to? Wasn't there something?
I don't know if it was 17. It wasn't 17, but it's enough for like 17 people to go at once.
I thought I remembered like something about like, because there were so many like licensed build operate.
Had to do with our square footage.
Okay.
Because we had so much square footage, and then like the second half of the building we didn't even build out. It was still just like storage and a warehouse. But that was all under the license, so we had to have all these bathrooms in the built-out side.
I remember visiting the facility, doing some product testing. This was like early, I think the first Xylem machine. It wasn't even called a Xylem machine. It was just
a name for it.
Yeah, but the first machine had just come in, and I was getting to see like the whole automation process. And at one point I had to use the bathroom, and it was like, pick your choice.
Yeah, it was like a maze of doors, and you'll find a bathroom somewhere.
So what was that like, though? I mean, you have other companies that are trying to make automation solutions, but they don't have that same competitive advantage or innovative advantage of literally being able to make your inputs right here and then being able to utilize them in your filling automation solutions. Tell me about that.
So I think that the other companies are just looking at a task that, employees are already accomplishing, just, whether it's by hand, whether it's with a slower machine, where we were looking at the challenge of, King City's a pretty remote location. So getting quality employees was a challenge right off the bat.
Right. It wasn't even just the volume of, even if you did have a room full of 1,000 people that were filling carts, that would have even been a challenge based on your geography.
Yeah.
Even if you were in the middle of some place where you could fulfill that staff requirement, you still would have the same level of inefficiency. I mean, the automation would...
We'd still need more people, essentially, just because all the other machines out there, our machine fills in caps. So that's getting rid of one whole task.
Right.
That if you're just having, a filling machine, you still have to have one person filling,
it's
one
like
person.
Semi-automation versus full automation.
Yeah.
Did you guys ever get a chance to really express that within Elite, or what happened?
I mean, it was so early on that we were just at first trying to get our own in-house brand kind of up and going. I mean, we didn't even look at other filling equipment. Like, I was doing all the vendor management, and I was mostly focused on, packaging, hardware, where can I get cheaper, tincture bottles and droppers, and how to make it, tamper-proof and child-proof at the same time,
right,
while keeping costs down, because our COGS were already maxed out.
Up. I mean, the vape carts that would come out of your shop were outrageous.
Yeah. So yeah, no, again, yes, because people think it's a race to the bottom, but you're going to sacrifice quality somewhere.
So what happened?
It was in 2020 that COVID really was taking effect to California. I was an essential worker, which was awesome. But what ended up happening was our farm got raided. Yeah, which was terrible. We hadn't planted anything in 2020 just because the price of crude was, dropping through the floor.
Right.
Which was good for us at the time because we weren't changing our prices on anything. So your COGS go down, your price stays the same, you're going to make a little bit more money. But someone had called in an anonymous tip and said that we were, still planted and selling out the back door. I managed all the compliance for the lab and the farm. So I was, told by our city folks that there was going to be a compliance check. So I was there waiting, and sure enough, 6 sheriff's trucks, full tactical gear rolled up.
Oh, so you thought you were just getting like a compliance check, and it turned out to be like a SWAT team.
Yeah.
What was that like?
It was awful.
I mean, we're just talking about how, you're renting different vehicles, showing up in Oakland, trying not to get robbed. Now you're in handcuffs?
Yeah. Well, we spent all this time doing stuff by the book is what I thought. And just to end up like that was really disappointing that they, just immediately tell me to turn around, put me in cuffs, have me leaning against, one of their cars while they're basically interrogating me. And I was like, look, I don't know what you guys are doing here.
And this is all for them to eventually find out that it was unnecessary. And
yeah, they never apologized, but
they never apologized. But the point is, sometimes you have to go through that experience even if you're not doing anything wrong.
Yeah.
These are the things that I wanted to kind of highlight earlier that I think people don't always realize, especially those that kind of came in later into the industry or working for an MSO, have always been on the, working in a bigger company capacity.
Yeah.
Their firsthand experience is MJ BizCon. Not like Oakland and handcuffs.
No, yeah, a lot of people just look at the corporate side of it and think it's just going to be fun to work in cannabis, but the truth is there's a lot of learning that goes into it to be successful.
I mean, but you started as in academics. You have 2 degrees. You're working in computer tech sales. Now you're in the beginning of a startup. Did you think that it was going to carry such risk?
Not at first, but now obviously I've learned that.
Well, how is that built to your character? Think about, sometimes the most challenging experiences breed the most knowledge. In the formation of Elite and everything you went through, not only on the product innovation side for the inputs, but then also the participation in the automation side, and then having it all blow up in your face. But look at your role today. I mean, if that hadn't happened, in a sense, it may not have kind of led to, Bugs Bunny if he would have made that left turn at Albuquerque.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's definitely turned me a little bit more of a pessimist in thinking of what could go wrong versus what's not going wrong.
But outside of pessimism, how
to fix the problem before it happens.
I was just going to say, doesn't that contribute to not only your character, but also your ability to act in more of a, you were in a sales capacity in tech. It seems like you are really in way more of a integrated capacity with your clients today. So kind of bring me through that. So COVID happened. At some point, you guys must have realized that hey, we've got some really great tech that the industry can use. Bring me through the start of Xylem.
Yeah, so it was probably right after the raid that, again, our farm had no cell phone reception or anything. So I was gone for 6 or 7 hours. And then when they did finally let me go, I was immediately driving back to the highway. And as soon as I got, cell phone reception and I was on the phone with Jeff, which she was like, "Where are you?" And then I explained everything that happened. And, after meeting with our lobbyists, just like, yeah, it's going to be tough to come back from this. I, kind of decided that I didn't want to be part of that specific company much more. And so I split off with Jeff. And, I was like, this machine that we've been kind of building here, I think a lot of people can benefit from it.
So tell me about that. Like, you wear multiple hats at the company. Can you just, is it possible to even describe your role and how you balance your responsibilities?
It's tough. I definitely devote the majority of my time to the customer support aspect. But, when I was in tech sales, it would just, as soon as I heard a yes from a potential client, like, yes, I want to buy it, I'd be like, all right, done.
You mentioned that.
It. Where now I definitely take a much more consultative approach and really evaluate them as a customer. Does it make sense for us to have them as a customer?
How many of your customers are trying to hire you full time? That's what I want to know.
I've had a few offers.
Loyalty, though, is, it sounds like Jeff is really, stuck by you, through this transitional time, and reciprocating that seems like it would make sense. And maybe also a non-compete would probably make sense. So what is it about the machines? Like, at Elite, these machines were, they were filling carts, but they were also filling a void in the industry. In that time, vape carts and technology really actually started to take the lead to flower and other ways to consume extracts and concentrates. Tell me a little bit about the machines themselves and, like, what is it about a Xylem automated filling machine that makes it different?
So I'd say it's the only machine in this industry that was actually built in a, volatile extraction facility that was regulated, using actual cannabinoids. And it was originally for our own product. So we were very careful and delicate on the product to make sure it wasn't going to ruin the experience, downwind when it came to the customer.
Yeah.
And so we fill ultra low temperatures compared to some of the other machines out there. I have clients, they'll fill at 38 degrees Celsius, which is roughly room temperature, I think 85 Fahrenheit, to 45 or 50 Celsius.
Why is that important?
I mean, if you're using cannabis-derived terpenes, those can quickly denature and oxidize and turn the product dark, not right away, but by the time it gets into the hands of the customer, it could ruin the flavors.
Right. So the machine is basically, like, from an output perspective,
You're getting rid of the most touch points of anything. I mean, we don't use trays or anything. You're just dumping carts in, dumping mouthpieces in, and it's filling and capping, up to 1,800 an hour.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's significant numbers.
Yeah.
And I'm sure also there's, like, a cost savings, consistency. Like, what are some of the client benefits?
It's definitely consistency. I mean, I've been put through the ringer with, quite a few clients where they make us, stop the machine every 100 carts, every 200 carts, 500 carts, and do weight checks to make sure it was consistent. We always had that consistency to the third decimal point, which, is passable by any standard.
And in addition to customer success, you're also the chief product tester. You get to smoke all the weed? Is that...
Only to go to sleep.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no, I can't work on these machines if I'm, smoking during the day.
Yeah, actually, that is a good point.
Yeah, my OCD definitely has to kick in before. I mean, you're talking about, this is driving a company's revenue. This is driving, our clients' revenue, and they're getting rid of their legacy filling equipment to the point where this, if this machine is down because it smokes a little bit and forgot to tighten the screw all the way.
Yeah, true. How do you ensure that your clients are successful? Like, do you have an approach?
I repeat everything multiple times and constantly asking them if there's any questions, and they say no, and then I ask them a question. If they can't answer it, I'd be like, see, so you did have a question.
Can you share an example of, like, how you've gone above and beyond for a client?
I've helped clients out on the filling side. When I was still living in LA, I'd have clients that'd be like, oh, our guy's out sick, can you come help out for the day?
Oh, actually just jump in?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
That made it easier for me on the customer support side to have a machine right in front of me.
Yeah.
Versus early on trying to learn these over FaceTime and Zoom calls.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, the weed industry is obviously full of its challenges, regulatory, whatnot, but also, like, just in general, the cannabis industry has shifted so much from the heyday to now being more of a commodity kind of market.
Much more regulated and much more widely accepted. And so a lot of people are getting into it. And I know I said earlier that all the cogs, seem like it's a race to the bottom. the one cost that is going up is labor.
Right.
So that's the one cost that's not going to go down.
Right. How has Xylem continued to evolve in terms of different products that are coming to the market that match with different trends in the industry?
So like one of the big trends that's been recently is disposable vapes, all-in-ones, different form factors. Everyone wants to be unique.
Yeah.
Where the 510 cart is kind of like the soda can of the cannabis industry is the way I describe it. So we do have some new machines coming out that are going to be adapting to that trend. But for our cart machines, we've just been constantly improving just with the millions and millions of carts that our clients have run through them. And with our agile team, we're able to kind of pivot on a moment's notice. I mean, for example, the parts on our early machines that would be kind of the wearables that would wear out first, we've gotten rid of.
Yeah. What about, so is it only vape carts, or you guys also make other products as well? So
we have our machine that fills and caps carts, and then we have a pre-roll infusing machine that was actually something a client requested because our pumps are, tried and true, and we're able to fill at such low temperatures. They asked if we had thought about making a pre-roll infusing machine for like hash hole or donut joints.
Okay, so this is exactly my point. Like, in 2017, 18, 19, the trend was carts and concentrates and whatnot, but we've seen in the last several years that these hash holes, donut joints, have really become kind of a thing. And you guys have a machine that makes that?
Yeah.
How does it work?
So you would just, whatever pre-roll machine, whether it's a knockbox or like an Apex or something like that, and you would just take your pre-rolls, load it into a tray, and this is going to basically be drilling a needle down in and then leaving your concentrate behind, whether that's rosin, whether it's distillate. I have clients that do CO2 oil in them, or live resin, basically anything like that. And what people were doing it before was just by hand with a syringe, which was, almost impossible from any kind of consistency standpoint, whether you're controlling the weight that's going in or like the length of your concentrate that's being left behind. This allows you to kind of scale that consistency up.
I've tried them. It's, it's crazy because when you're filling vape carts, you could kind of lend itself more toward it being an automated process. When it comes to joints, especially like for me, I'm kind of snobby in the sense, like pre-rolls versus hand roll is like a somewhat of a different experience.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about that. Like, do you guys get pushback in terms of conceptually bringing robotics into something that is that could be perceived as a human touch type of thing?
People are always going to find a way to hate on anything.
True.
So I don't read the comments.
Fair. What would you give as advice potentially to anyone who might want to come into this industry?
Don't. Unless unless you're absolutely it's become so saturated because everyone just looks at it like, I'm going to throw money at this and be successful. That's why you look at like the Ignites of the world that just threw a bunch of money and hoping something would stick.
Right.
And, people that were actually operating could, smell that BS from a mile away.
Take me through the opposite part of that though, because I study Japanese philosophy. They have a concept called ikigai. And ikigai is the intersection of what you're good at, what you're passionate about, what the world needs, and what makes you money. So outside of giving advice to someone coming in saying, hey, be cautious, tell me about your experience. Does working in the space still give you that desire to wake up every morning and get out of bed and love your job and know that you are actually like having a purpose and helping not only people, but also build an industry, and then also how that translates to the end users who are getting to consume these great products?
Yeah, it's the challenge always keeps me going, and because I've always said if you're not challenged, you're not learning, and if you're not learning, I get bored pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And so really expanding from just working in California to now every state that's legal. We have clients in 15 or 16 different states.
Yeah.
From, Alaska all the way down to Florida to, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Utah, Nevada, Arizona, California, obviously, Oregon, Washington.
Sure.
So all over the place. And so getting to travel a lot has been great. But again, it's a challenge. Every state is different, and every state is so different when it comes to regulations.
Can you share anything about the future of product innovation, the company?
You have to come to MJ BizCon to see that.
Oh, interesting. Well, actually, maybe I will. I typically have a 48-hour policy on Vegas.
Lucky you.
Yeah. So, Drew, thank you so much for sharing your story, your insights with us today. It's really been a pleasure learning about your journey and the innovative work that you're doing at Xylem.
Absolutely.
Your dedication to excellence, customer success truly sets you apart. To our viewers, we hope you found this conversation as enlightening as I did. The cannabis industry is evolving rapidly, and it's pioneers like Drew who are shaping its future through innovation and integrity. If you'd like to learn more about Xylem and their groundbreaking automated solutions, be sure to check out their website, follow them on social for updates on all of the latest developments. Drew, thank you for joining us today. Until next time, stay curious, keep exploring the possibilities. I'm Jason Pinsky, and we'll see you on the next episode.